Hey my friends, welcome back to a new video today. We have an incredible message to talk about how to raise beyond guilt. How often you feel guilty for doing something that was actually good for you. Sometimes you say no to somebody because you're saying yes to yourself and then you feel guilty. Sometimes you're moving on in life and you feel guilty. Sometimes you want to pause yourself from all the action in your life, but then you feel guilty about it. How often it happens to you? Ancient Greek philosophers had a saying for what they called weakness of will. The saying was akrasia. It's the concept of weakness of will. It was explored by philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So, akrasia refers to the state of acting against one's better judgment or failing to do what one believes is right. It recognizes that guilt can arise from knowingly choosing actions that contradict one's own moral standards. Usually, when we do something that is against what we believe to be right, we start to feel guilty. And this is so important to understand because sometimes we do something that is actually good for us, but our old program will say to us that it was wrong, right? If your old personality was a people pleaser and you were always doing things for others, which is not a bad thing, like you're just a kind person. But if this behavior is not in your control, you may be doing that also when you don't want to do it or when you don't feel like doing it. But then you've started saying no because you wanted to gain a greater level of self-control and you've started to feel guilt. It's because your old belief is saying to you that it's not right. And before we go further, I want to read a quick message, something I wrote down today, and I'm posting those messages on my Instagram page for this incredible community for all of you guys. So go also there, check it out, give me a follow, Instagram page, AttractPassion. Today's message goes like this: stop putting yourself down by listening to the voice of criticism in your head. You know what? If you would be your best friend, you would talk to yourself differently. You would show respect. You would appreciate. You would be proud. You would be supportive. You would be honest and truthful. Now practice becoming your own best friend. The relationship with yourself is the most important one you will ever have. Nurture it. So my friend, if this resonates with you, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel because it helps the algorithms to push this message to more people. And you see, it's just a virtue we need to develop to become our best friends. So you become the best friend for yourself. And I see it in this way. When I'm talking with my best friend, I always have, a sense of compassion for that person. And when that person is dealing with something, I have an advice, I have something to share. Something like, a generous support that I show for my friend. But when we are moving through something, and when we find ourselves being alone with our mental voice, that mental chattering, we tend to be the most negative towards ourselves. That's not what friend may do, right? It's different when you're truthful towards yourself, when you're honest towards yourself, when you say, hey man, this is something you need to change. There's no way around this. You are maybe not the best person in this, or maybe you're not the most skillful at this, or maybe you did truly something wrong there, but this is what you should do. You see, we start thinking more practically about ourselves. Because this mental chatter, it's a program of everything we've heard from our childhood. And most people are not well mentally trained So most people are not the best example to live by. So eventually we truly need to train ourselves to be kind towards ourselves, to be compassionate towards ourselves. That's why this message is so important, and it comes with its number 333 as alignment, to put thought into your choice. So your mental attitude becomes your own product of your creative thinking. There are so many things we shouldn't feel guilty about, and I want to talk more about this. So never feel guilty for moving on in life. When you move on from something, it may be a certain job, it may be a certain community, it may be a certain group of friends, some people who came to you always when they needed something. Are you familiar with that? Or you move on from certain habits. You move on from your family maybe. You may find your family being toxic in this certain period of your life. It doesn't mean that it will stay that way forever, but maybe right now you feel like that. And you've decided to move on, but now you feel guilty. It's just something that requires an upgrade in your belief system. Because your beliefs are saying to you that it's not right. So your old beliefs are also saying to you that what is right is to stay where you are because it's familiar, right? But your greatness will say to you, move on because something greater is waiting you there. Move on because your potential is far bigger, far greater than what you're doing right now. And you need to start believing to that greater part of you, wiser part of you. And if you're wondering how to believe to the wiser part of myself, you need to ask yourself what wisdom would do at this phase, what greatness would do at this phase. And if you have a figure of greatness, a figure of wisdom, if you have an example of somebody, it may be a teacher, it may be somebody who is embodying that virtue, you can visualize like what that person would do in this situation. And then do it. Be a doer. Be a doer. You will see that you will overcome guilt like nothing. Don't feel guilty for not responding immediately. You don't have to be accessible to everyone at all times. That's something that we need to learn in our lives, because I remember at the beginning when I started building my business, and every time I received an email, a phone call, a message, I've responded immediately. But when this thing started growing, when business started growing and we've started reaching more and more people, we've started receiving so many messages. And at some point I said, well, I just want to shut off my phone. I want to be unavailable when I have time for myself. And that was the best thing I ever did for myself. I've learned that the most important thing is that nothing disturbs my inner peace. Nothing disturbs the time I have for myself. Like, this is the time I have for myself, and this is the time I have for my family. This is the time I have for the community. This is the time I have for those people, and this is the time I have for this. But when I have time for myself, I will not allow anything to disturb this peaceful moment I have to nurture, to reflect, to rejuvenate, to ground myself, to meditate, to whatever I'm doing. And your old beliefs will say to you that it's not right. It will say to you, you should be always there for others. But greatness or wisdom would say to you, take time for yourself because you deserve it. You're worthy of it. If you want to be a bright light for others, you firstly need to know how to turn on that light, right? How to discover the source of your inner light. And you can only find it out if you have a great time for yourself. I've shared with you, I went on a solo trip just with myself, me, myself, and I. And it was an incredible thing because nothing was distracting me. I had time to reflect. I had time to think about my life. I had time to meditate. I had time to creatively think. I had time to write. I had time for all of that. I've turned off my phone. Nothing disturbed me. And you know what happens? We become so connected with something we've been ignoring for such a long time. There's a whispering of your heart always present within you, but because you've trained yourself to ignore it, you've started to believe that you're disconnected from it. But all you need is to take some more time for yourself and rather disconnect from everything else. That's just something we need to do here and there. And it's something we shouldn't feel guilty about. It's something we should be proud to do. Also, don't feel guilty for saying no to things that don't feel good to you. You know, when we start following or doing more things that actually feel good, we start to feel more aligned with the universal force that gives life to everything. That's why Wayne Dyer said, when you feel good, you feel God, right? Don't feel guilty for saying no to things that don't feel good, because only that way you can say yes to what feels great, right? Only by saying no to what doesn't feel good, you can say yes to what feels great. But it doesn't mean that you say no to your responsibilities. It's a difference. Knowing what are our responsibilities, doing also what's unpleasant, then constantly saying yes to what don't feel good. So we need to find a difference. But if we're constantly doing the things that don't feel right, at some point we need to take control over that. And we need to say, well, I'm worthy of something better, right? I'm worthy of doing things that actually bring me a great sense of joy. So you need to research yourself a little bit and ask yourself, what feels good? What gives you a sensation of feeling good? This is right. This is what I want to do. Like something I did in the past when I've started painting. It just felt right. It just felt good. And when I started sharing these messages, it just felt right. And I've started connecting with people because it felt right. But I also said no to many people because it felt right. I also left behind many people because it felt right. So we need to be in tune with what feels good, what feels right. And don't feel guilty saying no to things that don't feel good to you. Also, don't feel guilty for standing up for yourself. This is something that greatness would be proud of you, right? This is something that wisdom would say to you, congratulations. So the last time you were standing for yourself, maybe after that you felt guilty because the old program said to you it was wrong. You've hurt those people, right? Especially if you're more empathic, more sensitive person. You felt, oh, I've hurt that person because I said no. I've hurt that person because I've spoken my truth. I've expressed what I know to be true or what I knew to be true. And then you felt guilt. But the new version or the new set of beliefs or knowing, the inner knowing, your heart would say to you, congratulations, because you've overgrown yourself. You did something that was completely unfamiliar and now you've gained a new experience. It doesn't mean that it's right what you did, but you've learned something new because you did it. And that's what matters, right? And more often you do something like that, more you will grow. It doesn't mean that when we stand for ourselves that we always do something that is right. But we do it because we think that is right, and therefore we gain a new experience. And once we gain a new experience, eventually we will learn if that was actually right or if it was stupid or whatever. But we can't learn if we don't try. So if you were standing up for yourself, be proud of yourself. Old set of beliefs will say to you that it was wrong and you will feel guilty. But be grateful because you found an inner courage within you. So you know it's there and you can use it again and again, right? Also, don't feel guilty for being really good at something. Accept the compliment when somebody says something to you, you know? Sometimes we feel guilty because we've worked hard on something that is important to us. Or you may recognize that you are much better at doing something than most people. And then when you speak with those people, you feel a bit guilty. But, you know, you've worked for that. You've worked for that. Be proud of yourself. Be proud of yourself. And look up for what's to come. Look up towards where you're going. But also notice that because of your work, you are a great example for others. You may feel guilty because you are better at doing that than others. Not in an egoistic way, but you've put more time and effort and energy and willpower into it. So you're being a great example that it's possible to be really good at something if you invest a lot of energy into it, right? Be proud of yourself. Don't feel guilty for taking a break, my friend. When you feel tired, when you feel exhausted, when you feel drained out, when you feel that your cup of life is empty, you start to think of taking a break. But as soon as you start thinking about taking a break, you may start to think about all the successful people that are, you know, talking about hustling and working hard and you will sleep when you die and so on, and you feel like you're a quitter if you take a break. And then you feel guilty because all that set of beliefs is saying to you that it's not right. But wisdom would say to you, you have nothing to share if your cup of life is empty, right? Greatness would say to you that in order to serve, in order to be helpful in society, you need to know how to help yourself, right? And in order to know how to help yourself, you need to take time for yourself and you need to nurture yourself the way you want to be nurtured so you can notice what works. Because what works for you may work for somebody else maybe as well. And therefore you can become more helpful and practical for somebody who may be dealing with something similar that you are moving through. Eventually in the future you will be able to help many people if you learn to help yourself. So don't feel guilty for taking a break, pressing the pause button of your life and do something for your soul. Don't feel guilty about that. This is the best thing you will ever do. And if you create a habit out of it, your life will become truly incredible because you will start establishing balance. Because you see, when we look at the cycles of nature, we see there's thriving, but there's also resting. There's planting and there's reaping, right? There are at least 4 major seasons in nature. And when we think about those 4 major seasons, we need to recognize that we are the nature. So all those 4 seasons are happening in our lives constantly as well. The season of rest, when we just need to be slower. Then there's the season of planting, when we're setting intentions and starting something new and making big changes in our lives, planting seeds for the future, deciding to change our jobs, to start a new career, to start a new hobby, to meet new people, to get into a new relationship, whatever. This is the phase or the cycle of planting. Then there's the cycle of reaping, getting manifestations, finding results of our work. It all comes, right? And then there's the season of thriving, noticing how much we are growing, noticing how much we are becoming resilient, getting all those incredible manifestations that we've been working on for such a long time, experiencing the growth, appreciating all the good stuff that happens, and we start to thrive. Those are all seasons, but then again, there will come a season where we need to slow down. We can only start to recognize the seasons if we take a break and we notice, oh, what I truly need right now. So don't feel guilty for taking a break. Don't feel guilty for that. Also, don't feel guilty for feeling good about yourself. How often you feel good about yourself and then you see how many people are sad because they don't know how to feel good about themselves, and then you feel guilty. How often you feel like that? You will never feel guilty enough to help somebody else to be happier. You will never feel guilty enough to help somebody else to feel better. So when you feel good about yourself, your light is shining the most. But again, not in an egoistic way, like not, oh, I'm much better than you. You just feel good about yourself because you're connected with nature. You're connected with the essence. You're one with life. That's why you feel good about yourself, because you know that what we call our myself is the great universe. It's, it's life expressing through me. That's what is myself, right? That's why when Moses asked God what is his name so he could explain it to his people, his followers, God said to him, I am that I am. Right? I am that I am. When you feel good about yourself, you feel that connection. That's what you feel. So you shouldn't feel guilty for feeling God, right? You shouldn't feel guilty for feeling life, for feeling connection. Rather, learn to express it. Learn to express it in any form. For me, the easiest way it's express it. It is expressing it through paintings, through making these videos, through writing. So I love to do that. There are ways where I'm not so good at expressing life. But where I am good at it, I want to do more of it because it just feels good. It feels right. So don't feel guilty for feeling good about yourself, because that's where you feel life, right? And also don't feel guilty for choosing yourself. Every time you choose yourself, you've chosen yourself because you felt a need to choose yourself, because there's an experience waiting you, a lesson waiting you. And you will never know where this lesson will take you or what you will learn. But you felt that you need to do it because something in the future is waiting you. A certain important lesson is waiting you. And once you will find it out, you will appreciate that choice. So don't feel guilty for choosing yourself. There may be a situation where you felt like, oh, my friends invited me to a party and I actually don't want to go. So my heart is saying, well, rather go into gym or go into the forest or read that book that is unfinished. And you've chosen the voice of your heart and now you feel guilty. Because your old set of beliefs is saying to you that it's not right, that the right thing would be to go with your friends out and get drunk or whatever. But wisdom would say to you, do what feels right. Do what your heart says to you. And greatness would say to you that only by listening to your heart you can become great, right? So, choosing yourself is an act of greatness. By choosing yourself, you can become more helpful for others because you know how to choose yourself. You know how to follow to what your heart is whispering. You know how to be there for yourself. So when somebody will need you, you will know how to be there for others as well, right? So that's why choosing yourself is a great act you can take on. My friends, I hope you found something valuable today in this powerful message. Let me know how it inspired you, and let me know what is your biggest struggle maybe with guilt and how you've learned to overcome it, or how you're working on it, or if it is still on the level of just struggling with it. Write it in the comment section and initiate the conversation with others, because so many people are dealing with that as well. And when we notice that we are not alone, it just becomes more inspiring. Oh, let's find a way, right? We feel, oh, let's find a way. So just to remind you that you're never alone in this process. We're all in this together. And my friends, never quit on yourself. Never give up on yourself, because you never know how far life can take you if you just believe a little bit more into that new version of yourself that is reminding you of wisdom and greatness, of grace, love, and care that you have for becoming that more evolved version of yourself that already exists in that potential future. Most of the guilt and fear and shame comes from an old set of beliefs. And in order to experience something new, we eventually need to ditch them and design new ones. But the whole process of transformation is a long journey that is not always easy. That's why we need to constantly keep reminding ourselves that there is a way. There is a way, and there are steps, and there are practical tools that I can use to transform what needs to be transformed. And that is an act of an alchemist. So believe into your inner alchemist, my friend. Till next time, I hope you've enjoyed in today's painting. And if you would like to get a piece of it, go and check out our Etsy shop, I Draw My Passion. The link is in the description of this video. Thank you so much for your support. With that, you're supporting this mission. Until next time, one love.